I'm Laura Clark, I'm 36 years old, and I just watched a judge give my ex-husband full custody of our two daughters, along with our $6.5 million mansion that I designed with my own hands. Every archway, every window placement, every detail of that house came from my mind. I sketched it on napkins during our honeymoon in Tuscany. And now it belongs solely to Marcus. The judge called me financially unstable and emotionally dependent. Marcus's lawyer smiled as they stripped away everything, even the building I'd poured my soul into creating. I sat there in that courtroom, wearing the one good dress I still owned, watching my entire world collapse like a building with no foundation. If this story hits home, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Every betrayal I share comes with a twist you won't see coming. But what they didn't know was that my grandmother Zofia had been preparing for this exact moment since the day I got married 15 years ago. She saw something in Marcus that I was too in love to notice, and she spent the rest of her life making sure that when he finally showed his true colors, I would have something he could never touch. Have you ever lost everything, only to discover you had power you never knew existed? Drop a comment below because you'll want to see what happened next. 12 years. 12 years I gave that man everything while he built his real estate empire. I managed our household, raised Sophia and Nina, designed his award-winning projects without a single credit to my name, and somehow convinced myself I was building something alongside him. What a fool I'd been. The prenup I'd signed at 24 came back to haunt me like a ghost I'd forgotten existed. Young, in love, and stupid, I'd signed away rights to everything, including my own architectural work. I remember sitting in Marcus's attorney's office before the wedding, watching him slide that thick document across the mahogany desk. "It's just a formality," Marcus had assured me, his hand warm on my shoulder. "My family requires it. It doesn't mean anything. We're building a life together." I'd signed every page without reading them, trusting him completely. That trust was now the weapon he used to take everything from me. "Mrs. Clark," Judge Morrison's voice cut through my shock, pulling me back to the present moment where my entire world was collapsing. "Given your 12-year employment gap and current financial situation, the court finds it in the children's best interest to remain with their father. You have no independent income, no current professional credentials, and no stable housing arrangement." Sophia's face flashed in my mind, my 11-year-old daughter who still needed me to help her with math homework every night. Nina, my 8-year-old, who had nightmares and only I could calm her down. They were mine. I'd carried them, birthed them, raised them. "Your Honor," I started to speak, but my court-appointed attorney touched my arm, silencing me. The decision was final. Marcus had painted me as an unemployable housewife with artistic pretensions who contributed nothing to our marriage except spending his money and playing with sketches. Never mind that I had an architecture degree from a prestigious university. Never mind that I'd graduated top of my class. Never mind that I'd sacrificed my career, my professional license, my entire identity to support his ambitions. None of that mattered now. Walking out of that courthouse felt like walking through a graveyard of my own dreams. Everything I'd been for the past 12 years was buried in that courtroom. The other wives in our social circle would whisper about me now. "Poor Laura," they'd say, with that pitying tone. She really should have seen this coming. But none of them would offer help. That's not how our world worked. Marcus was already loading the children into his Mercedes when I reached the parking lot. Sophia pressed her face against the window, tears streaming down her cheeks. Nina didn't even look at me. At 8, she probably didn't understand why Mommy couldn't come home anymore. I mouthed, "I love you" to Sophia through the glass, but Marcus pulled away before she could respond. His new girlfriend sat in the passenger seat, the woman who would now sleep in the master bedroom I'd designed, live in the house I'd created, raise my daughters. Danielle was young, polished, probably didn't even know that the vaulted ceilings in the great room were my solution to the lot's difficult angles. She wouldn't know that I'd spent 3 months perfecting the natural light flow through the kitchen. She wouldn't care that every detail of that house was a love letter to a family I'd thought we were building together. Standing alone in that parking lot, clutching the keys to my old Honda, the only thing Marcus couldn't take because it was in my name from before our marriage, I realized I had exactly one place to go. The old Victorian row house my grandmother Sophia had left me 3 years ago. I'd never even spent a full night there. Marcus always found excuses to avoid visiting what he called that immigrant neighborhood. But it was mine. Marcus's name was nowhere on the deed. For the first time in months, I owned something he couldn't touch. Little did I know just how much that house would change everything. The drive to grandmother's house took 40 minutes through the city streets I'd once known so well. As I drove, I passed the first building I'd ever designed for Marcus. A boutique office complex on 5th Street, all glass and steel with green spaces integrated into the structure. The Architectural Journal had called it visionary and groundbreaking. They'd interviewed Marcus for 3 pages about his innovative design philosophy. My name appeared nowhere. I'd been pregnant with Nina at the time, sketching spatial solutions between diaper changes and morning sickness. When I finally pulled up to the narrow Victorian row house in the old Polish neighborhood, my heart sank even further. The building looked tired, worn, forgotten. Paint peeling, windows dusty, the front steps cracked. This was supposed to be my fresh start. This relic of my grandmother's mysterious past. The neighborhood had changed too. What had once been a tight-knit Polish community was now a mix of young professionals and long-time residents. I could see coffee shops and galleries where I remembered butcher shops and bakeries. I grabbed my single suitcase from the trunk. Pathetic how little I'd managed to salvage from my former life. Everything else was still in the mansion, the house Marcus now controlled completely. A few clothes, my old laptop, some photographs of the girls, and one box of sketches I'd hidden in the garage. That was my entire life now, condensed into objects that fit in a Honda trunk. As I approached the front door, Mrs. Kowalski peeked out from the neighboring building. She must have been watching for me. "Laura, Kochani, is that you?" Her weathered face showed surprise and concern. "We heard about the divorce. Your Babsia, she would be so angry at that man, so angry. She never trusted him, you know. Never. She used to say to me, 'That man has the eyes of someone who takes.'" The key still worked, thank God. Inside smelled like dust and memories, like my grandmother's perfume mixed with old books, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Sophia's furniture remained exactly as I remembered, covered in sheets like ghosts of a different time. I stood in what used to be her living room, overwhelmed by the magnitude of starting over at 36, with nothing but a broken-down house and $1,200 in my checking account. That first night, I cried myself to sleep on Babsia's old sofa, wrapped in a quilt she'd made before I was born. But when morning came, something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was the silence. No Marcus criticizing my coffee. No children fighting over toys. No schedule demanding my constant attention. For the first time in years, I could think clearly. Let me tell you how I got here. How a girl who once won every architecture award her university offered ended up with nothing. I grew up in this neighborhood, actually. My parents immigrated from Poland before I was born, worked hard, struggled like so many immigrant families do. But my grandmother, Zofia, she was different. Always elegant, always mysterious about her past. She worked as a seamstress, or so everyone thought. But she had this way about her. Designer clothes from decades past, real jewelry I thought were nice costume pieces, and an apartment that somehow always seemed too nice for a seamstress's income. Laura, mocha she would say, stroking my hair as I sketched buildings in her living room. You have the gift. You see structures, spaces, how things fit together. This is power they cannot take from you. I didn't understand what she meant about they. I was too young, too American, too focused on my future to think about my grandmother's cryptic warnings. I excelled in school. Math, especially geometry and spatial reasoning, came naturally. By high school, I knew I wanted to be an architect. My parents were proud, but worried. Architecture was expensive to study, competitive, dominated by men. But I was determined. I earned a full scholarship to a prestigious architecture program, graduated summa cum laude at 22, landed a position at a respected firm in the city. I had real prospects, real talent, a real future. I was designing commercial spaces, learning from masters, building my portfolio. That's when I met Marcus Clark. He came to our firm for a consultation on a mixed-use development project. Tall, confident, from old money, everything I wasn't. He was 30 then, already running his family's real estate development company. And he was charming. God, he was so charming. "You're the one who designed this?" he asked, looking at my preliminary sketches for his project. "This is brilliant. The way you've maximized the natural light while maintaining privacy, the flow between spaces. You're gifted." I was 23 and someone important was calling me gifted. Someone handsome and successful was looking at me like I mattered. I fell hard and fast. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. His mother, Vivian, made her disapproval clear from the start. "Marcus, dear, she's very pretty, but is she really our kind of people?" I heard her say at a family dinner, thinking I was out of earshot. "Her parents work in a factory. She's first generation, and that grandmother of hers, living in that neighborhood." But Marcus insisted he loved me, that his mother would come around. We married in a small ceremony. Grandmother Zofia attended, elegant in a vintage suit that probably cost more than my parents' car, though none of us knew that at the time. "Laura," she pulled me aside before the ceremony, "I need you to hear something. That man, he sees you as decoration, not foundation. Beautiful, yes, but he will try to make you ornament, not structure. Promise me you will remember who you are." I laughed it off. Babsia was old-fashioned, didn't understand American relationships, didn't see how much Marcus loved me. How wrong I was. The first year was good. I kept working at the firm, Marcus built his projects, we bought a small house in the suburbs. I was happy, productive, myself. But then I got pregnant with Sophia. "You should take some time off," Marcus suggested. "We can afford it. The baby needs you. I need you. My projects are getting bigger, and I need someone I can trust managing everything at home." I took maternity leave, planning to return after 6 months. But Marcus kept finding reasons why I should wait. The baby needed me. I was tired. The firm would understand. And then I got pregnant with Nina. "Laura, be reasonable," Marcus said when I mentioned going back to work. "2 children under 3? You're needed at home. Besides, you can still design. Help me with my projects. That way you're using your skills and we're building something together." That's when the theft began, though I didn't recognize it as theft. Marcus would ask for my input on his developments. I'd sketch ideas, solve spatial problems, create innovative solutions. He'd praise my work, tell me I was brilliant, then present my designs to clients as his own. "It's easier this way," he explained. "You're not licensed anymore since you let it lapse, and clients expect to work with the principal. But this is our work, our success together." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. Meanwhile, his mother's influence grew stronger. Vivian had opinions about everything: how I dressed, how I decorated our home, how I raised the children, what food I served at dinner parties. "In Marcus's family, we do things a certain way," she would say, her voice dripping with condescension. "I understand you didn't grow up with our advantages, but the girls need to learn proper American manners." Proper American? She meant not Polish, not immigrant, not like my family. I stopped cooking my grandmother's recipes, stopped speaking Polish with my parents when Marcus's family was around, stopped suggesting my design ideas should be credited to me. I made myself smaller and smaller, trying to fit into a space Marcus and his mother had decided I should occupy. Grandmother Zofia noticed. During our visits, which became less frequent as Marcus found excuses why we were too busy, she would study me with those sharp eyes. "You are disappearing, Laura," she said during one visit, 3 years before she died. "Like morning mist. Soon there will be nothing left of the girl who built cities in her mind." "I'm fine, Babsha," I insisted. "I'm happy. I have a beautiful home, 2 wonderful daughters, a husband who loves me." She took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman in her 80s. "Laura, moja kochana, listen to me. I came to this country with nothing. I built something. I protected it. I saved it. For you, for when you need it." "What are you talking about?" I asked, confused. "When he tries to erase you, and he will, find the envelope where the stories live. Your grandfather and I built something that man can never touch. Promise me you will look." I promised, humoring her. Old people said strange things. I had no idea she was giving me the key to my survival. Zofia died 6 months later. She left me her row house in the city. Marcus was dismissive. "Keep it as a rental property," he suggested. "That neighborhood is gentrifying, might be worth something eventually." I visited once after her funeral. The house felt haunted by her presence. Her sewing room, her books, her furniture, all untouched. I couldn't bear to go through her things, so I locked the door and didn't return. That was my mistake. I should have listened sooner. Over the next few years, I designed 12 major projects for Marcus's company, 12 award-winning buildings that put his firm on the national map. 12 projects where my name appeared nowhere. I was the ghost architect, the invisible hand behind his success. I tried to convince myself I was content. I had my daughters. I had a comfortable life. I had the $6.5 million mansion I'd designed for our family, even if it was entirely in Marcus's name due to that prenup. But Marcus grew distant, critical, controlling. He monitored my spending, questioned my purchases, made me account for every hour of my day. "You don't understand how hard I work," he would say when I complained. "Someone has to actually earn the money. You just spend it." My designs earned that money, I wanted to scream, but I never did. I'd lost my voice somewhere along the way. Then came the final betrayal. I discovered Marcus was having an affair with Danielle, a young marketing executive at his company. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. "I need someone who understands my world, Laura. Someone ambitious. You've let yourself go. You've become boring, dependent, useless except for your little sketches." Little sketches. My architectural designs, my brilliant, award-winning work, reduced to little sketches. That's when he filed for divorce, and that's when I discovered just how thoroughly he'd trapped me. The prenup I'd signed gave me nothing. No alimony, no portion of his business, even though my work built it. No claim to the mansion, even though I designed it. Nothing. His lawyers argued I was unemployable, had no independent income, couldn't provide stable housing. They painted me as an artistic dreamer who'd contributed nothing real to the marriage. And the judge believed them. Standing in grandmother's house now, surrounded by her things, I finally understood what she'd been trying to tell me. She'd seen Marcus clearly from the beginning, and she'd prepared for this exact moment. I just needed to find that envelope. The next morning, I woke early to my first day of this strange new life. No children to get ready for school. No Marcus's coffee to make just the way he liked it. No schedule except survival. I made instant coffee in Babsia's tiny kitchen and assessed my situation with the cold clarity of desperation. I had $1,200. The house, which needed repairs I couldn't afford. A 12-year gap in my employment history. An expired architectural license. And 2 daughters I was only allowed to see under supervised visits once a week. My phone rang. Sarah Chen, an attorney, and my old college roommate I'd reconnected with during the divorce. Laura, I reviewed the custody order. It's harsh but not uncommon for initial rulings. However, if you can demonstrate significant improvement in your financial circumstances within 6 months, we can petition for modification. You need income. You need housing. You need to prove stability. I have housing, I said, looking around the dusty living room. You need clean, safe, appropriate housing with separate rooms for the girls. And you need a job, Laura. Something legitimate that shows you're building a career, not just surviving. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began searching for architectural positions. The results were devastating. Every posting required current licensure, recent portfolio work, references from recent employers. I had none of those things. Then I saw a posting that made my heart skip. A small restoration firm specializing in historic buildings was looking for a drafting assistant. No license required, just portfolio and design sense. It was entry-level, probably paid poorly, but it was architecture. I spent the entire day preparing my application. I dug through boxes in Babsia's house until I found my old portfolio from university. The designs were good, better than good. They reminded me of who I'd once been. I added sketches from a journal I'd kept, including detailed drawings of the mansion. I submitted the application and tried not to hope too hard. The supervised visit with my daughters that week broke my heart into new pieces. The community center where visits happened was institutional and cold, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Gray walls, plastic chairs, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sick. This was where I was supposed to rebuild my relationship with my own children. Sophia sat across from me at the small table, while the court observer, a woman named Janet, took notes in the corner. My daughter looked angry, confused, lost. She'd inherited my green eyes but Marcus's dark hair. Looking at her was like looking at a photograph of possibilities, all the futures we might have together slipping away. "Daddy says you chose to leave us," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "He says you didn't want to take care of us anymore. He says you wanted to go live alone and do your own thing instead of being our mom." Each word was a knife. I could hear Marcus's voice in her repetition, his careful poisoning of their minds against me. This was his strategy, his way of ensuring they wouldn't want to come back even if I got custody. "That's not true, sweetheart," I said, choosing my words carefully, aware that Janet was documenting everything. "I will always want you. Always." I'm working hard to make a home for us. It's just taking time to get everything ready. But why can't you just come home? Why can't you just say you're sorry to Daddy and come back to our house? How do you explain to an 11-year-old that there's no going back? That her father systematically destroyed her mother's career and identity? That the house she thinks of as home was stolen, along with 12 years of my work? Daddy says you don't have money or a job. He says you can't take care of us like he can. He says we need stability and you can't give us that. The poison Marcus was feeding them was working. I could see it in Sophia's eyes, this new doubt about my love, my capability, my worth as a mother. He was doing to them exactly what he'd done to me, making them question reality until his version was the only truth they could see. Nina was quieter, clinging to me but saying little. She was only 8, still young enough to need her mother desperately, but old enough to sense that something was terribly wrong. When our hour ended, she whispered in my ear, "I miss you, Mama. I miss you every day. I don't like sleeping in your big house without you. It's not home anymore. It's empty even when we're all there." Those words stayed with me for days. Empty even when we're all there. Walking away from them was agony. The observer's notes would go to the judge, documenting every word, every gesture, building a case about whether I was fit to mother my own children. Back at Babsia's house, I found Mrs. Kowalski waiting on the front steps with a covered dish that smelled like heaven. Pierogi, the way my grandmother used to make them. "Laura Mohejetsko, I need to tell you something about your babcia," she said, following me inside without invitation. "We neighbors, we all knew. Your grandmother was not just seamstress. She was so much more." "What do you mean?" I asked, making tea in Babcia's old kettle, my hands going through motions I'd performed 1,000 times as a child. Mrs. Kowalski settled herself at the kitchen table, her expression serious. She owned buildings. This building, others too. She was smart businesswoman. Very private, very careful, but we knew. She would leave early morning, dressed in her good suits, carry briefcase. She traveled to New York for business meetings. She had accountants come here, lawyers. Important people treated her with respect. We all wondered why she never told you these things. Why she lived so quietly when she had so much. My hands shook as I poured the tea, nearly missing the cup. She owned this building, not just her apartment? The whole building, Kocheni, all 4 units. Maybe more buildings, I don't know. She collected rent, but she gave good deals to Polish families who needed help. She was generous, but also smart. Always reinvesting, always planning. She used to say to me, "Ewa, I build for my Laura, for when she needs it most." That's what she said, for when you need it most. After Mrs. Kowalski left, I began searching in earnest. I started in the sewing room, looking through drawers filled with thread and fabric, behind pictures of Poland and family, under furniture that held the weight of decades. Nothing. The bedroom yielded old jewelry boxes filled with what I'd always assumed were costume pieces, though now I wondered. The kitchen had only cooking implements and my grandmother's handwritten recipe cards in Polish. Hours passed. Frustration built inside me until I wanted to scream at the walls, demand they reveal their secrets. Then I remembered Babsia's words, spoken when I was still young enough to believe in magic. Where the stories live. She used to read to me in the corner of the living room, surrounded by her bookshelves, both of us wrapped in quilts during winter. We would sit in her chair, and she would tell me tales of Poland, of coming to America with nothing, of building a life from courage and careful planning. I pulled books off shelves methodically, looking behind them, finding only dust and old bookmarks, pressed flowers from decades ago, photographs of people I didn't recognize. I felt along the walls for hidden panels, knocked to listen for hollow spaces. Nothing. The frustration was overwhelming, the feeling that I was missing something obvious. My phone rang again. The restoration firm. They wanted an interview. Finally, something was going right. The interview was both humiliating and hopeful. The restoration firm's office was in a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial charm. Thomas Walsh, the owner, was a man in his 60s who'd spent his career preserving historic buildings. His office walls were covered with photographs of beautiful old structures brought back to life. "Your portfolio from university is impressive," he said, reviewing my old work with careful attention. "But that was 14 years ago. What have you done since?" "The field has changed significantly. New technologies, new materials, new approaches to sustainability." I made a decision then, one that felt terrifying and necessary. I pulled out my phone and showed him photographs of the mansion, of Marcus's other projects, along with my original sketches that I'd photographed before leaving. "I designed these," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "My ex-husband took credit, but these are mine. Every detail, every spatial solution, every innovative element came from my mind. This is 12 years of work he claimed as his own." Thomas studied the images carefully, zooming in on details, comparing my sketches to the finished buildings. "If this is true, you're exceptionally talented. The way you've handled natural light in this space, the flow between public and private areas, the integration of outdoor elements, these are sophisticated solutions. But you understand, I can't verify these claims without more documentation." "I can prove it," I said, feeling bolder now. "I have dated sketchbooks going back years, preliminary drawings with my handwriting, notes about client meetings, even emails where I discussed specific design problems and their solutions. I documented everything without realizing I'd need to defend my own work someday." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with new interest. "Ms. Clark, I'm going to be honest with you. If what you're saying is true, you're not just a good architect. You're someone who's been systematically erased. That interests me because I spend my life trying to save buildings that others want to erase. Maybe we can help each other." He offered me the position. $20 an hour, part-time, with possibility of expansion if I could reinstate my architectural license. It wasn't much, but it was architecture. It was a start. It was proof that someone valued my skills, my mind, my contributions. That evening, I sat in Babsia's reading chair, exhausted and overwhelmed. I needed to find whatever she'd left me. I needed to prove I could provide for my daughters. I needed to show Marcus and his mother and that judge that I was more than they'd decided I was. I looked at grandmother's portrait hanging on the wall. A formal photograph from the 1980s, her wearing an elegant suit, her expression serene and knowing, like she knew secrets the rest of us couldn't imagine. The frame was ornate, heavy, older than the photograph itself. On impulse, I stood and lifted the portrait off the wall. Behind it was a small envelope, taped carefully to the back of the frame. My hands trembled as I pulled it free. The envelope was thick, substantial, yellowed slightly with age. On the front, in Babsia's careful handwriting, "For Laura, when you need it most." I sat back down in her chair and opened the envelope. Inside were letters, documents, keys, and photographs I'd never seen. My grandmother's secret life, carefully documented and preserved, waiting for the moment I would finally understand. The first letter was dated 3 months before she died. "Moja droga Laura. If you are reading this, then that man has tried to make you small. I know this feeling. In Poland, then in America, men tried to make me invisible. But I had something they did not expect. I had your grandfather Stanisław, who believed women could build empires. Together, we created something magnificent and hidden. Keep reading, Kochani. Everything you need is here. Your Babcia Zofia. My hands shook as I reached for the next document. A property deed for this building, and another property, and another. 7 buildings in total, all in my grandmother's name, now transferred to me in her will. Then bank statements, investment accounts, stock portfolios. Numbers so large I thought I must be reading them wrong. Then photographs. My grandmother at construction sites in the 1970s and 80s, wearing a hard hat, reviewing blueprints. More photographs of her with architects, developers, city planners. She wasn't just an investor. She was a consulting architect. The truth crashed over me like a wave. My grandmother hadn't been a seamstress. She'd been a secret architect, designing buildings under male colleagues' names, investing her earnings, building an empire while everyone believed she hemmed dresses. And she'd left it all to me. The next letter explained everything. Laura, Mohavnuchka. By now you have seen the deeds, the bank accounts, the photographs. Let me tell you our story, the one I never told while I was alive. Your grandfather and I came from Poland with architectural degrees no one in America would recognize. He was brilliant, but his accent, his foreign credentials, they barred him from proper work. So we made an arrangement with American architects who needed talent but wanted the credit. I designed buildings under their names. They paid me well, better than they intended because they didn't think a woman would understand her worth. I saved everything. I invested in the buildings I'd designed, buying them when the market dipped. Your grandfather managed the properties while I continued designing. When he died, I kept working. For 40 years, I built this portfolio. 8 buildings in prime city locations. Stocks in companies I researched carefully. Bonds and investments diversified and protected. All hidden, all legal, all documented. Waiting for you. The total value is approximately $8.7 million. The rental income alone generates $45,000 per month, managed by a trust I established with Kowalski Property Management. But Laura, this is not just money. This is proof. Proof that immigrant women are not decoration. Proof that our work has value even when men steal credit. Proof that you come from builders, not victims. I watched Marcus diminish you. I saw him take your designs, your talent, your voice. I wanted to intervene, but your mother convinced me to wait, to let you find your own strength. Now you have the resources to fight back. Use them wisely. Reclaim your work. Rebuild your career. Show your daughters that women can be architects of their own destiny. The detailed documents are in Safety Deposit Box 247 at National Trust Bank, 4th and Maple. The key is in this envelope. My attorney, Robert Morrison at Morrison & Associates, has been expecting your call. Build something beautiful with your freedom, Kochani. Your Babcia Zofia. I read the letter 3 times, unable to process what it meant. $8.7 million. Monthly income of $45,000. Properties. Investments. A secret empire built by my grandmother's genius and determination. I wasn't broke. I wasn't powerless. I had resources Marcus didn't even know existed. The next morning, I called Robert Morrison. He answered immediately. Ms. Clark, I've been waiting for your call. Your grandmother was very specific about timing. She said you wouldn't look until you'd lost everything. I'm sorry it came to that. We met at his office that afternoon. Robert was a distinguished man in his 70s who clearly had respected my grandmother deeply. Zofia was remarkable, he said, spreading documents across his conference table. She understood that power isn't just about having resources. It's about knowing when to reveal them. She wanted you to find your strength first, before you discovered you had money. He walked me through everything. The 8 properties, all historic buildings in the city's arts district, now worth considerably more than Babsia had paid for them. The investment portfolio, carefully managed by a firm she'd selected decades ago. The documentation of every building she'd secretly designed, including correspondence proving her authorship. "There's more," Robert said, pulling out another file. "Your grandmother tracked your husband's career. She documented every project you designed that he took credit for. Every sketch, every preliminary drawing, every email where you discussed spatial solutions. She hired a private investigator to photograph your dated notebooks and files before Marcus could destroy them. She knew he would try to erase me," I whispered. "She knew men like him always do. She wanted you protected. Now, Ms. Clark, what do you want to do with this information?" I thought about my daughters being poisoned against me, about the judge who'd called me unstable and dependent, about Marcus's smug smile as he'd driven away with my children, about Vivian's condescension and cruelty. I want everything my grandmother built transferred to my name. I want my architectural license reinstated. I want custody of my daughters, and I want credit for every building I designed. Robert smiled. "Then let's begin." Within a week, my transformation started. I met with the investment firm managing Babsia's portfolio. Thomas Parker, the senior advisor, was thrilled to finally meet me. "Your grandmother spoke of you constantly," he said. "She told us you inherited your grandfather's mind for structures and her patience for long-term planning. She was right about the market timing for several major positions. You've gained approximately $2.3 million in value since her death. I hired a contractor to renovate Babsia's building. Not just cosmetic repairs, but a complete restoration that would honor her vision and create the home my daughters deserved. The top floor would be our family apartment. The ground floor would become my architectural studio. The middle floors would continue generating rental income. I contacted the state licensing board about reinstating my credentials. With my original degree, continuing education courses I could complete online, and letters of recommendation from my old professors, I could be relicensed within 4 months. Then I made the call that would change everything. I hired intellectual property attorney Jennifer Wu, one of the best in the state. "Ms. Clark, what you're describing is extensive copyright infringement," Jennifer said after reviewing Babsia's documentation. 12 major projects, all with proof of your original authorship, all credited solely to your ex-husband's firm. This is not just unethical, it's illegal. "What are my options?" I asked. "We file copyright claims on each project. We demand public correction of authorship. We seek compensation for unauthorized use of your work. And we make it very, very public. The architectural community needs to know what he did." "Will it hurt his business?" "It will devastate it. Several of his current projects are based on your design language. If you hold the copyrights, he can't legally continue without your permission. But Ms. Clark, I need to warn you. This will be brutal. He will fight back. His reputation will be destroyed, but he will try to destroy you in the process." I thought about Sophia asking why I didn't want them anymore, about Nina's nightmares, about years of being invisible while Marcus took credit for my brilliance. "File everything," I said. "It's time for the truth." The copyright claims hit Marcus's firm like a bomb. Jennifer filed simultaneously with the Copyright Office, the City Planning Commission, and the Architectural Review Board. Each filing included extensive documentation, Babsia's investigation files, my original sketches with dates, notebooks showing the evolution of each design, and email records I'd forgotten existed. The local architecture journal picked up the story first. Prominent developer accused of stealing ex-wife's designs. Then the major newspapers. Copyright battle reveals hidden female architect behind award-winning projects. By the end of the week, it was trending on social media. The reaction was swift and overwhelming. Female architects across the country started sharing stories of similar theft, of their work being claimed by male colleagues, of systematic erasure in the profession. Design students analyzed my buildings online, discussing the distinctive elements of my style. Professional organizations demanded investigations. The American Institute of Architects opened an ethics inquiry. Marcus's attorney called within 48 hours, demanding I cease and desist, threatening countersuits for defamation. Jennifer's response was swift and brutal. We had ironclad proof. Every claim was documented. Every design was dated. Every theft was provable. Moreover, we had witnesses. My old professors remembered my university work and could testify to my style and capabilities. Thomas Walsh from the restoration firm was prepared to testify about my design expertise. Your client has 3 options, Jennifer told them in a conference call I was allowed to listen to. 1, he settles immediately, providing full public credit and substantial compensation. 2, he fights, and we take this to trial, where his reputation will be destroyed in open court. 3, he agrees to custody modification, and we limit the copyright claims to financial compensation without extensive public trials. I chose option 3 without hesitation. I didn't want revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted my daughters back. I wanted recognition for my work. I wanted Marcus to understand he couldn't erase me anymore. Marcus called me directly that night, something he hadn't done since the divorce. His voice shook with anger and disbelief when I answered. "How did you do this?" he demanded, not even bothering with a greeting. "You had nothing 6 months ago. No money, no resources, no leverage. Where did all of this come from? The lawyers, the documentation, the evidence? How are you paying for any of this?" "My grandmother," I said calmly, enjoying the power of knowing something he didn't. "The woman your mother called an immigrant seamstress. The woman you both dismissed as irrelevant. She was building an empire while you were learning to tie your shoes, and she left it all to me because she saw exactly what you were from the moment we met." The silence on his end was satisfying. I could almost hear his mind recalculating everything he thought he knew about me, about my grandmother, about the balance of power between us. "This is extortion," he finally said, his voice tight. "No, Marcus, this is justice. You stole 12 years of my work. You took credit for my designs, my innovations, my vision. You left me with nothing and took my children, hoping I'd just disappear quietly. Now you get to choose. Fight me and lose everything, or settle and keep your business intact. What do you want?" The defeat in his voice was unmistakable. "Primary custody of Sophia and Nina. Public credit for every building I designed. And I want you to stop poisoning my daughters against me. Do that, and I'll allow you to continue using my design language in your current projects without additional fees. Refuse, and I pursue full damages, which Jennifer estimates at approximately $18 million for unauthorized use of copyrighted designs." The silence stretched between us for what felt like an eternity. I could almost hear his world reshaping around this new reality. The powerless ex-wife he'd dismissed was now the person holding his entire career in her hands. Every project his firm had built its reputation on was mine. Every award he'd accepted should have had my name on it. Every client who'd praised his vision had actually been praising my work. "I need to think about it," he finally said. "You have 48 hours. After that, Jennifer files for public trial and I pursue full damages. That's approximately $18 million in unauthorized use of copyrighted designs, according to our experts." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From power. From finally having the resources to fight back. Sarah called moments later. "Laura, what did you do?" "Marcus's lawyer just called begging for a custody negotiation meeting. They're offering primary custody if you drop the copyright claims." "Tell them I'm not dropping anything. I want custody and recognition for my work. They don't get to pretend I didn't exist anymore." "They're going to agree," Sarah said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "You've got them cornered." That night, I stood in Babsia's building, watching contractors work on the renovation. My building now, my empire, my future. I thought about grandmother Zofia designing buildings in secret, saving every penny, building something no one could see, but everyone would eventually benefit from. She'd done it for me. She'd seen my future before I could imagine it. "Thank you, Babsia," I whispered to her portrait, now hanging in my new office. "I understand now. You were teaching me that real power isn't about being seen. It's about being strong." The custody modification hearing happened faster than I'd expected. Marcus's attorneys, suddenly cooperative, agreed to an expedited review. Judge Morrison, the same judge who'd given Marcus everything 6 months earlier, reviewed the new evidence with careful attention. "Ms. Clark," he began, "the court notes significant changes in your circumstances. You now own property, have substantial assets, steady income, and documentation proving professional expertise. Additionally, the court has received reports that the children have expressed desire to live with you." Sarah presented evidence systematically. My renovated building with bedrooms for each daughter, my architectural studio on the ground floor, my reinstatement application for my professional license, approved pending completion of continuing education courses, bank statements showing not just stability, but considerable wealth. Then she presented the copyright documentation. Every building I'd designed, every sketch Marcus had claimed as his own, 12 major projects worth millions in development fees, all created by me. "Your Honor," Sarah said, "Ms. Clark didn't just become financially stable. She reclaimed the professional identity her ex-husband had stolen and erased. She is the architect behind some of this city's most celebrated recent buildings. Her contributions were deliberately hidden, but the truth is now documented and undeniable." Marcus's attorney tried to minimize the copyright claims, but Judge Morrison cut him off. "Counselor, this court is not here to adjudicate intellectual property disputes. However, these documents clearly demonstrate that Ms. Clark possesses professional expertise and earning capacity that was misrepresented during the original proceedings. The question before me now is what custody arrangement serves the children's best interests." Then Ruth, the court-appointed child advocate, testified. She conducted interviews with Sophia and Nina over the past 3 weeks. Both children expressed strong desire to live primarily with their mother, Ruth reported. They described feeling more emotionally secure with Ms. Clark. They're excited about their new rooms in her building and speak with pride about their mother's work. While they love their father, they've indicated he's often absent due to work pressures and that his new girlfriend makes them uncomfortable. I watched Marcus's face as Ruth spoke. He looked diminished somehow, like a building whose facade had been removed to reveal a structure less impressive than advertised. Judge Morrison announced his decision without much deliberation. Primary physical custody is awarded to Ms. Clark, with Mr. Clark receiving standard visitation every other weekend and alternating holidays. Both parents will share legal custody with Ms. Clark, having final decision-making authority on education and medical matters. This arrangement will be reviewed in 6 months to ensure stability. Sophia and Nina moved in 2 weeks later. Watching them explore their new rooms, decorated in colors they'd chosen, filled with furniture they'd picked out, was the sweetest victory I could imagine. "Mama, this is really ours?" Nina asked, running her hands along the new bookshelf I'd designed specifically for her. "Daddy can't take it away?" "This is really ours, Kochani," I said, using Babshia's term of endearment. "Nobody can take it away." Sophia was quieter, but I found her in the studio late that evening, looking at the architectural drawings pinned to my walls. "Did you really design all of Daddy's buildings?" she asked. "I designed them," I confirmed. "Your father built them, managed the projects, made them real. We were a team once, even if he forgot to share the credit." "He lied to us," she said, her voice small and hurt. "He said you couldn't do anything important, that you were just a housewife who spent his money." I sat down next to her, choosing my words carefully. "Your father believed what made him feel powerful. Sometimes people need to make others small so they can feel big. But it doesn't mean he doesn't love you." "Are you going to be famous now?" she asked. "Now that people know you designed those buildings?" "Maybe a little," I admitted. "But more importantly, I'm going to keep designing. I'm opening my own firm. And someday, if you're interested, maybe you'll design buildings too." Her eyes lit up. "Could I? Could I really?" "Sophia, you can do anything. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." My practice, Clark Heritage Designs, opened officially 3 months later. I specialized in historic restoration and adaptive reuse, bringing new life to old buildings while honoring their history. Exactly what Babsia had done with her empire. My first major commission came from an unexpected source. The Polish Cultural Center needed renovation and expansion. When they learned about my grandmother's story, about how she'd secretly designed buildings for decades, they insisted I take the project. "You honor both Polish heritage and women architects," the board president said. "This is exactly the story we want to celebrate." The project was $2 million in fees, my largest to date. But more than the money, it was the recognition. My name on the plans. My vision brought to life. My work finally visible. Marcus and I established an uneasy peace. He had standard visitation, which he sometimes skipped due to work pressures. His business had survived the copyright scandal, barely, but his reputation had taken permanent damage. He was no longer the visionary developer he'd claimed to be. He was the man who'd stolen his wife's work. His mother, Vivian, tried to maintain contact with the girls, but I'd established firm boundaries. She could see them with my permission, which I gave sparingly and never alone. The woman who'd spent years telling me I wasn't good enough didn't get unlimited access to my daughters anymore. "But I'm their grandmother," she protested during one tense phone call. "And I'm their mother," I replied. "The mother you tried to erase. The mother you told them wasn't capable or worthy. You get what I decide to give you, Vivian. That's how this works now." The architectural community's recognition meant more than I'd expected. I was invited to speak at my alma mater about intellectual property rights for women designers. I wrote articles about design theft and how to protect your work. Young female architects reached out, thanking me for making visible something many had experienced. But the sweetest moment came a year after everything changed. I was selected to design a new mixed-use development in the Arts District. The developer specifically wanted me because of my innovative approach to space and light. At the groundbreaking ceremony, with Sophia and Nina beside me, I watched the first shovel break ground on a building that would bear my name. Laura Clark, architect. Not hidden, not erased, not forgotten. "Mama, is this like Great Babshia's buildings?" Nina asked, watching the ceremony. "Yes, Kuchani. Except this time, everyone knows who designed it." That evening, I sat in Babshia's chair in my studio, now my chair in my studio, and wrote a letter I would never send. A letter to my grandmother, wherever she was. Babshia Zofia. You were right about everything. About Marcus seeing me as decoration. About needing to find the envelope where stories live. About building something they can never touch. I understand now why you didn't tell me while you were alive. I needed to lose everything to find out who I really was. I needed to be erased to learn how to become visible. You gave me money, yes. But more than that, you gave me proof that I come from women who build empires in secret, who design futures while others sleep, who understand that real power is patient and strategic. I'm teaching Sophia and Nina this lesson, not the lesson that women must hide their strength, but the lesson that women must protect it carefully and use it wisely. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for preparing for my future when I was too blind to imagine it. Thank you for being the architect of my freedom. Mohababchia, I build in your honor now. Every project, every design, every building that bears my name honors the buildings you designed in shadow. You are no longer invisible. Your story is part of mine, and together we show the world what women can create. With all my love and gratitude, Laura. 5 years later, my life looked completely different from that day in the courthouse when I'd lost everything. I'd designed 14 major projects. My firm employed 8 architects. I'd been featured in Architectural Digest. I taught a seminar at the university about women in architecture and intellectual property protection. But the measure of success wasn't in the buildings or the recognition. It was in moments like Sunday dinners with my daughters, teaching them to make Babsia's Polish recipes while discussing their dreams for the future. It was in Sophia, now 16, sketching building designs in her notebook and talking about studying architecture. It was in Nina, 13, who'd started a blog about female architects throughout history, including a detailed post about her great-grandmother, Sophia. It was in knowing that I'd broken a cycle. My daughters would never doubt their worth. They would never make themselves small. They would never let anyone steal their work or their voice. Marcus had faded into the background. He maintained visitation, had remarried, seemed smaller somehow than the man who'd once controlled my entire world. We were cordial for the girl's sake, but he'd lost all power over me. I no longer needed his approval or feared his judgment. On what would have been Babsia's 100th birthday, I unveiled a plaque at the Polish Cultural Center. It read, "Designed by Laura Clark, AIA, in memory of Zofia Kowalska, whose hidden brilliance paved the way." I'd included her photograph from the 1980s, elegant and knowing, with a new caption explaining her secret career as a consulting architect. "Great Babsia was like a superhero," Nina said at the ceremony. "She had a secret identity." "She did," I agreed, "but not because she was ashamed, because she was strategic. She built something no one could see until the moment it needed to be revealed." That night, I stood on the balcony of my building, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there were 8 buildings my grandmother had designed in secret. Somewhere out there were 14 buildings I'd designed, now properly credited. Somewhere out there were future buildings my daughters might design. We were architects, all 3 generations. Building structures, yes. But more than that, building futures, building freedom, building proof that women can create empires from nothing. The best revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's building something so beautiful, so lasting, so undeniably yours that it proves they were wrong about you all along. Marcus took 12 years of my life, but Babsia Zofia gave me the foundation to build the next 50, and I was just getting started. Have you ever discovered hidden strength you didn't know you had? Has anyone in your family prepared a path for you without you knowing? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button because every woman deserves to know her own power. Remember, you are not decoration. You are foundation. You are not ornament. You are structure. And nobody can take that away from you if you protect it carefully and use it wisely. The envelope is waiting. Sometimes you just need to know where to look.